and I see that this participant joining has slowed down, so hopefully everyone's here. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. My name is Rebecca, and I'm with the Weaselhead Preservation Society in Calgary. Tonight, we are presenting from Calgary, and I'd like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 7 territory. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Kainai, Piikani, Tsuut'ina, Stoney Nakoda Nations, Métis Nation Region 3, and all the people who make their homes on Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. And welcome to all of you from wherever you are tuning in today. I know we have people from all over the country and even outside of Canada. So wherever you're tuning in today from, welcome. The Weaselhead Park is a natural park within the city of Calgary. And the Weaselhead Glenmore Park Preservation Society works to protect and maintain the beauty and biodiversity of Weaselhead Park, and we encourage appreciation of our urban parks. We do this through educational school programs, volunteer programs such as our invasive plant program, and educational webinars such as this. We are a nonprofit organization, so donations and memberships help support us, so we are always appreciative of that. So if you are able to give a small donation tonight or want to join as a member, we'd appreciate that. I'll send links out in the chat once Matt starts talking. And we do have other webinars similar to this planned throughout the spring and summer. So if you're interested, sign up for our e-newsletter and you won't miss out on what we have planned for the rest of the summer. Yeah, so I think that's it. Today we have Matt Wallace joining us. He's one of our board members and also with the City Nature Challenge for the Calgary region. And he is going to be presenting on iNaturalist and getting us ready for the upcoming City Nature Challenge. So Matt, I'll pass it over to you.
Great, thanks so much, Rebecca. Just set up my screen here. Okay, so thank you everyone for showing up tonight. I'd like to thank the Weaselhead Glenmore Park Preservation Society and Nature Alberta for helping to support this event. And today we're going to be discussing iNaturalist, what it's all about, how to use it, and how you can be prepared for the upcoming City Nature Challenge. So my name is Matt Wallace. I'm an avid iNat user. My background is in geography and urban ecology. And for the past couple of years, I've been organizing the City Nature Challenge and other bio blitzes happening within the Calgary and Southern Alberta area. My interest is associated with geography and urban habitats, the urbanophiles, so those plants and birds that seem to be extremely successful within urban environments, and just the things that are a little bit not so natural, let's say. So if you want to find me on iNaturalist, you can find me down there at WowOKYes, or Instagram, Twitter, and you can check out my website to find out about some other events happening. So the reason we're doing this event tonight is the upcoming City Nature Challenge. I'm not sure where everyone is tuned in from, but there are over 350 cities participating this year. The idea of the City Nature Challenge is a collaborative competition kind of thing to celebrate urban biodiversity. So the way it works is we have 4 days to blitz our urban areas and make as many observations, post them to iNaturalist. We're looking for species diversity and we're looking to just engage people. So the top ranking cities from each category will be recognized on May 10th. So from April 30th to May 3rd, that's your time to make your observations, and you have until May 9th to upload all of those. So for the Calgary area, our boundaries include the municipal boundaries of Calgary, Cochrane, Airdrie, Chestermere, Okotoks, and Glenbow Ranch Provincial Park. So we look forward to seeing what you have out there in your city and hope that you'll be able to participate. So one of the most unique things about the City Nature Challenge is the fact that it places an emphasis on urban biodiversity. We're really beginning to understand that urban habitats or urban environments are extreme areas where there can be a lot of variability in the types of species we may find. It's not only about how we live in these, like how humans interact within cities that's important, but it's understanding how we relate to nature and how nature exists among us. So I love the City Nature Challenge because as far as I know, it's the largest and only urban BioBlitz in the world that focuses specifically on urban biodiversity. So to participate in the City Nature Challenge, April 30th to May 3rd, you're going to be making observations using the iNaturalist app. The app is available on your phones or on your computer. And here in Canada, I would highly recommend using iNaturalist.ca if you're going to create an account there. But really, what is iNaturalist? So iNaturalist, in its essence, is a social network for people to share information about biodiversity. And there are kind of two goals that iNaturalist.org states behind the platform. So one is just simply to connect people to nature. And how can we encourage people to be outside and engage with nature or the non-human world in the digital age? Well, iNaturalist is a pretty amazing tool where it merges technology, learning, citizen science or community science, and nature itself. So as a secondary goal, from the information that's collected from people experiencing nature, it can generate a lot of scientifically valuable data. And this is the real power of iNaturalist, where by simply not knowing what it is, taking a photo, you can connect with a global network of naturalists, researchers, conservation organizations, and all that in between. So this is just a small little schematic that I made up about iNaturalist and how it kind of functions. So around the world, there's people who are taking photos or making audio recordings of plants, animals, insects, fungi, everything down to corals and microorganisms. They're going to upload them to the iNaturalist app, whether it be on their phone or computer. And often these people are generalists. They don't really have an expertise in any field. But when they upload it to iNaturalist, there's an artificial intelligence that's built right into it that will assess the image, the location, the date and time of when you're making that observation, and it provides suggestions to the users. And that's great. Like, people have an immediate result about what it is they may have encountered. But what's really amazing is that there's this growing iNaturalist community that helps to confirm and organize all of the data behind that. So simply, it's people making identifications which can push a general observation, let's say plants, down to a species level identification. And it's a mix of experts, amateurs, students, completely new to nature sort of people, and it's a really welcoming and I would say a very safe environment. So kind of what happens with the data is that it's open source, it's available for research purposes. As a community member, you can view the data, you can explore it yourself, and we'll kind of dive into that a little bit today. But the way that it works in terms of iNaturalist.ca, all of the information that's gathered at iNaturalist.ca that becomes research grade is then transferred over to NatureServe Canada, and then later on to the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. And the records that are stored in these places are the same that you would find of quality sometimes. It can't always be perfect, but the photographic quality, the confirmation of a community allows these records to become permanent records where they are comparable to such things as museum collections made by experts in other fields. So really amazing stuff. And it's not just the data that's kind of open source, but everything kind of within iNaturalist kicks it back to getting to that individual user. So you can, there are other applications that are kind of using the iNaturalist AI work to improve their visual AI cues. There are people that are looking at the data in a variety of ways, and we'll kind of talk about that here. But as I said, like the majority of people using iNaturalist are the generalists. So it always comes up like, what is this? What is this plant? Or what is this bird? And, you might not be connected to, let's say, all of these Facebook groups or whatnot. You may not be aware of them. Maybe you don't know like a naturalist in your community. So who can you ask? Well, by posting those observations to iNaturalist, people are kind of rewarded some answers and sometimes some really interesting discoveries. And I would say one of the most powerful things about iNaturalist, at least what we've seen in the past year and a half of it, is it's become a form of recreation. So, people are using this as a way to get outside, explore, really pursue other hobbies such as photography or bird watching, those types of things. And there are some people like myself out there who are continuously looking for things, hoping to make a new discovery of such. And then there's kind of this third component, which is more or less like the citizen science, community science component, where people want to share their observations with a broader community, contribute data for research purposes or for conservation purposes, those types of things. So on the other end, what are the researchers or conservation groups kind of looking for with the iNaturalist data that's produced from these millions of observations that are coming up? Well, I think to date, there's about 1,000 peer-reviewed journals or scientific journals that have sourced iNaturalist data. And these range from everything from, new species, rare species, invasive species, lots of topics on phenology and species relationships. But it also goes back into kind of what I was saying about the AI and image recognition technology, social sciences in terms of, where are people experiencing nature or using these apps to access nature. Excuse me. And then there's all of kind of these like small scale research projects going on. So I'll just kind of show you briefly this Weaselhead project that we have going on in the park. So a couple things I want you to notice here are, we don't have that many observers. It's only about 265 right now, but a few people making a lot of observations can lead to a lot of interesting things. So we found some new species in the park in the past 2 years of running this project. We've got over 5,600 observations. And we're sitting at about 65% research grade, which would suggest that it's high quality data that can be used for other purposes. And if we kind of look at this breakdown of what are people interested in, well, it's kind of all over the map, but primarily plants and a lot of birds. Weaselhead is a great place to go birding if you're ever visiting Calgary. So what does this look like in terms of our project? Well, it helps us to understand kind of where people are experiencing the park in different ways. So the main pathways are some of the busiest. Some of these areas that provide access to the reservoir where you can see some pretty amazing migratory birds at different times of the year. These are the kind of the biodiversity hotspots as far as we know from where people are exploring and sharing their observations. And when we look at kind of the bigger picture of Calgary, how we're doing here, there's been tremendous growth in Calgary in the past 3 years since I first began the City Nature Challenge here. So when I first started using it in 2018, there was only 5,000 observations. And within the 3-year period, we're over 61,000 observations. This has led to just a tremendous amount of, species discoveries or locations within Calgary that we can look at. In the past, from some research projects that I've worked on, including my thesis and whatnot, I found that many of our urban areas and parks are underrepresented in their species diversity. So I think that the use of iNaturalist is really pushing that. And when we look at kind of the areas around our natural areas, we see that there's very few observations within the urban environment. So these would be our communities, industrial areas, let's say golf courses, something like that. You can really see that there's a high amount of concentration or a high concentration of observations in our parks and whatnot, which kind of begs the question, well, what exists between that? And when we look at the city in a larger picture, we really don't know that much about how our urban environment over time has shaped biodiversity. And I would make the argument that, incredible nature can be found right outside your back door. So these are all the photos you'll be seeing in this presentation are just some observations that I've made on iNaturalist. And they're almost all within Calgary. So these 3 photos on the side, these orchids here, I found literally in a roadside median one day while out for a bio blitz. We're always interested in seeing the phenology of plants, but also there are some researchers out there looking at kind of species relationships, such as pollinators. And there has been some topical debates that are very interesting about how honeybees are competing with our native bees and whatnot. So this is kind of a photo of an example of that. And even last year where, I found this family of badgers right in downtown Calgary. So there's some pretty fantastic things out there. And by sharing our observations, we can begin to understand why, where, when, how, and about all of these different topics. So I have this little question down here. You're welcome to enter your answers into the chat or just ponder it yourself. But if you had to guess how many species you've ever encountered in your entire life, how many do you think that would be? I'm just going to check the chat really quick. See if there's anything going on here. And Rebecca, can I get a nod if my sound is still working? Okay, cool. So this next part of the presentation, I'm going to show you guys how you can make some observations using iNaturalist. So when you go to inaturalist.ca, this is the landing page that you'll find. And once you've created your account, you can use Facebook for that, or you can sign up using email and whatnot. You'll find you're on your dashboard here. So if you're brand new to iNaturalist, you're probably not going to find any posts here. Maybe some things coming from iNaturalist Canada, such as this one on the side. But the dashboard is a pretty cool place. If you have an interest in any specific species or different types of observations, you can subscribe to these types of things. So for me, like I'm really interested in, beavers and American woodcocks. So they always come up on my feed here. And also this will show me how people are interacting with some of the content that I've either provided or engaged with. So when you sign on to iNaturalist, whether it's on the app or online, I would really just encourage you for the first time to ensure that you are affiliated with iNaturalist Canada. And the way you do that is you go up to your profile picture there, click on the drop-down arrow, and it'll open up your account. So you can enter a little bio here. Perhaps you're an expert in some various taxonomic field. I think it's important to understand that iNaturalist is a social network. So why not, socialize a little bit, and your bio can help to do that. The next thing you want to do is you want to go to your account and then just check on the right side and select your iNaturalist Canada affiliation. And what that does is it allows Canadian data centers to manage the data and also researchers to access it a little bit quicker than if it were to go through the iNaturalist.org. So on your app, all you have to do is go to the settings, which will look like a gear or a wheel icon. Click that, go to settings, and just double check that you're on iNaturalist Canada. So now we're kind of diving into iNaturalist a little bit more. We're going to check out the Explore features on here really quick. So pretty impressive. Just within Canada, we have over 4.5 million observations. There's thousands of observations being uploaded every single day. You can see on the side here some of the most recent ones, where they are. So everything from Quebec to Ontario and beyond. And when you look at this map, you can definitely see that so this is a kind of a density map as well. So the darker the red, the more observations within that area. And of course, because fewer people live in the north, we have much fewer observations being uploaded to iNaturalist or whatnot. But that's not to say that you can't upload them at a later time or whatnot. So we can zoom in a little bit further into Alberta and see how it's looking here. And you can see the exact same thing. So Calgary, larger city than Edmonton, obviously, but we also have a larger community of iNaturalist users. So it's a little bit biased towards the Calgary area right now, but I know that over time, we'll be covering this map a lot thoroughly. So, and if you're interested in exploring anywhere in particular, at the top of the observations explore tab here, you can enter in a location and a specific species for anything that you'd like to see. And I'll just show you a couple other things really quick here. So the way that the Explore search engine works is it looks at kind of a Google placeholder sort of thing. So if you type in Calgary, Alberta, it's literally just going to give you this box around Calgary. But people such as myself have been curating a lot of different places. So you can find all of the Alberta parks and natural areas, mostly all the legs of the Great Trail now, lots of municipalities and whatnot that I've added in here. And if you'd like to look at just one of those places, you can do so by clicking on the Places of Interest tab and looking for some of the community curated spaces around you. And when you click those, you can see that this is the municipal boundary that I've uploaded for Calgary. So just a little trick if you're really looking to get some details on some things. You can also apply these filters, which are pretty cool. So we're looking within the city of Calgary, and let's say we want to look at some of the reptile observations. It's always interesting in the summer when, I'm biking around and I hear people saying, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know that there were snakes in the city or whatnot." But we actually have quite a few. And what you can see by applying that filter is all the locations of where snakes have been found within the cities. And primarily we see these in our natural areas and along the river corridors. There's a couple ways to view this. So you can click on either the pins on the images on the side, or you can use the grid and list views. So this is the grid where it shows kind of the photo-centric version of it. And then kind of the list, which has a little bit more details for it. Okay, so in terms of making iNaturalist observations, you can really make it of almost anything. So the kind of the basis of an observation is you need some evidence of an organism. So this could be a photograph, a sound recording, or even some notes that you might add. And your photo is kind of the what, and then the geolocation is the where, and then the timestamp of that photo or the audio recording is the when. And I'll be honest, like there are lots of different apps out there. I can even kind of see a question in the chat regarding the comparison of other apps, but iNaturalist, the focus is on wild organisms. So sure, you can make observations of like your garden plants or street trees, animals at the zoo, all of that stuff. But iNaturalist is going to kind of obscure that from what are called verifiable observations. They just become casual because they were intentionally placed within a location. But it can be, you know, observations of animals, plants, all that stuff. But you can also provide evidence of life. Those things might be, you know, cones or tracks, feathers, dead organisms, or a chrysalis, for example, a nest, those types of things. Sometimes just based on the structure of these other things, we can identify exactly what species it is, suggesting that it was there at some time. And, you know, there may be some value in that. And you can also make audio recordings, which is super cool. iNaturalist is not at a point where it can make identifications on your audio calls, but with the community review process, lots of bird experts or, you know, frog experts out there are going to be able to help you out with those types of things. So I just want to show you guys how to make or how to upload some observations. Once you've been out in the field, you've taken some photos with your camera, you're going to upload them into the iNaturalist.ca. I'll just say that at the end of this, so we'll be focusing on the desktop, but at the very end, I'll go really quickly through the process on the smartphone app as well. So up at the top, you can click the upload, and it's going to bring in your uploader for iNaturalist here. So the simplest way to do it is you can just, you know, have your file explorer open on your computer, and you can drag directly from your SD card if you want right into iNaturalist. There's also this more import options. So let's say you have some historical lists or something like that, or you have a large account on Flickr or Facebook, a collection of photos. You can upload them from those platforms too. So this is me. I've dragged in a few observations that I made last week, and I'll kind of walk you through the process on how this works. The first thing that I would recommend to you is selecting the location section of each observation. So if you just click on location there, it's going to bring up a map. And for the purposes of this presentation, all of these observations, as you can see, don't have a location already, but there are other ways of gaining that with your computer, or sorry, with your camera and your phones and GPS logs and whatnot. So once you click this, you know, you can search for a location or just zoom in on the map. So today we're going to search for Weaselhead, and it's going to bring us to the Weaselhead parking lot based on the address that Google uses for this area. So this isn't exactly where I saw this muskrat. And one way to fix this is that you can take the center of the dot and move it to a location. Or if you're just a little bit uncertain, you can expand the circle using the outer dots. So what I've done here is I've zoomed in on the map, and I'll just kind of use my mouse right underneath the Elbow River Bridge here, the Barry Erskine Bridge. And, you know, I was on the shore there, so I was somewhere within, say, 20 meters diameter of shooting this muskrat within this area. So now that I have that, I'll select update my observation at the bottom. And you can see that the observation now has a location with it. So the next thing that's really quick to do is, if you're a bird photographer, you know what it's like when you shoot, 30 photos or whatnot, only to get one. Well, sometimes between those observations, you may get other details. So primarily for insects or plants or whatnot, you want to show some other details. So the way that you can upload multiple photos, up to 20 within a single observation, is to combine your observations. So you can simply drag the photo over the other one, or you can use up in the top corner the combine once they're both highlighted. So what I would recommend for this is to always try and have your best photo first, because that's what iNaturalist is going to use for its photo recognition. So I think that the left one's a little bit better because it shows the face of the bird, a little bit more color. So you can see I've dragged that other one over top and it's there. And I've gone ahead and added in the locations for these. And they're there. So now that we have the locations, we're going to click on the "What did you see" button. So it'll say, "What did you see" on your phone? But on iNaturalist.ca, it says species name. So the reason we chose the location is because the AI is going to be kind of geo-referencing other photos made within our area. And what we can see is that, excuse me, underneath each suggestion that iNaturalist is making, it says visually similar and seen nearby. So what this means is that simply from the photograph, iNaturalist thinks that this species, based on other photographs, is most likely. They're very similar in their, say, size, shape, color, all of this, the variables within an image. And then the scene nearby means that it's been observed and identified by the iNaturalist community within the area. So that's why it's important to have your location set when making your observations if you're uncertain of what it is you're looking at. If you do know what it is, you can simply enter in the name. So just to kind of touch on this one little question here, it's not that iNaturalist is trying to discourage people from making observations of captive or cultivated organisms. But in terms of building our species distribution maps through iNaturalist, if we have observations out of place, it can skew those distribution maps, showing that it's not a natural change within the geography of it. So just for the purposes of this, I've even included some flowers that I saw popping out of the ground the other day, and how we can actually upload those within iNaturalist. So the simplest thing is, you're just going to click on the observation so that you can edit the observation. And on the side here, you can see that there's a captive cultivated box. So I'll simply check that, and you can see that there's a C at the top, meaning that it's, recognized that it was introduced by people to this location. And I will also kind of touch back on the idea of captive cultivated things. There is some research going on with it. So some things may not make it to, say, research grade because it's wild. There are some interesting questions about perhaps like the composition of our landscapes within cities or parks, those types of things. And some researchers may be looking at more casual observations. So once you've got all of your information in there, I would recommend adding in some notes. For example, like I saw this muskrat eating underneath this bridge, a couple of house finches playing in the trees, that kind of thing. And the reason you add some notes like that is because those are keywords that people can search for in iNaturalist if they're looking. So if you say something like, this bird hit a window and I found it in my yard or something, there may be a group that's out there looking specifically at window strikes, and they'll be able to type in windows and find your observation. So at the very end, all you have to do is hit submit, and you've done your first batch upload into iNaturalist. So now I'm just going to kind of dive into this really quick with how it looks like on an Android phone. It is slightly different on an iPhone, I will say. And if you have been using iNaturalist on an iPhone for some time, there's a new version that just came out last week that I would recommend you either delete the app and re-download it, or just see if there's an upgrade within the app. And what's important about this update is that you'll be able to make sound recordings directly from within the app. So same kind of thing on your phone. Generally what you have is a dashboard, but if you click on the three little lines there at the top or on the settings wheel, it'll bring up in this menu. And you can click new observation. So what I would say, I never encourage people to use iNaturalist in the field unless they're, just making something quick. I would encourage you to spend your time out in nature, enjoy it, take some photos, and then maybe return to those images later on and just, appreciate the time you had out outdoors. So what I do is I go outside, I take photos with my camera, with my phone, and then I get home and I select this choose image option. So you can make observations directly from the app. You can even make some without any media. That would just be some notes of something interesting that you saw or something. What is cool about the recording sounds from within the app is that it will geotag your audio recordings automatically. And same with the photos, and that should already be happening on your phone if you have the location services turned on. So after I check the choose image box, it'll bring up my camera gallery. So you can see when I go out, I make quite a few observations, and each observation should only include one species, but it can include a multitude of images within that. So the way to add multiple photos at the same time is you hold down one photo until it's selected, and then you can select all of the other ones at the same time. And it will bring the photos directly into the app uploader. So same thing, I would recommend putting your best photo first. And this one has the most, traits of this plant within this observation thing. So with the what did you see, it's going to let me choose some or view some seen nearby and visually similar suggestions. You can filter those out. And then same thing, I add a couple notes. And as you can see, my location is already saved because of the photo. So at the very end of it, you can check the captive cultivated box if it's one of those observations. You can change the location visibility. And I'm sorry, I realized I should have mentioned this back there, or during the desktop. The location visibility is an interesting topic within iNaturalist. So there are three options for it. There's open, which means that anybody can view the location of your observation and the photos that you've uploaded. And then there's an obscured option, meaning that people can see the photos, but not the exact location. What happens is that there's a 20 by 20 kilometer grid. And for each unique user to look at that observation, it's a random point within it. So this is something that you may want to use if you come across something that you think is particularly sensitive. Let's say could be like an owl, or it could be an observation you've been making inside of your house where you don't want to, allow people to see exactly where you're living. There is a third option, and I don't recommend using it. It's just a private log of it. So only you'll be able to see the true location and the photos for it itself. So in terms of kind of the socialization of iNaturalist, the private setting doesn't really work that well. And I do see that there are a couple of questions coming up in the chat, and feel free to throw them in there as we go along. I'll come back and answer them all at the end and in a big lump sum. So what I would say about just making like really great observations for iNaturalist is, first, it doesn't hurt to take more photos than what you think you need. So what I mean by that is, try and get some, if you're taking a photo of a tree, let's say, maybe take some photos, a close-up of, say, the leaves, the top and the bottom, perhaps cones or any fruit that may be on the tree. And then you can even take a panoramic shot or just a shot from a little bit further away to include the entire organism. Sometimes I even include habitat photos if it's like for a particular reason. So that's something you may want to consider too. Of course, you want your images to be in focus, but it's not always possible. And even if you don't get them in focus, I would still encourage you to upload them because often people are able to identify an organism to some degree. And I think it's really fun to kind of be like the urban explorer and all that. You can definitely use iNaturalist to look at areas where people may not be visiting, a place where, you might just not expect to find anything. This could be what's in your backyard or literally in the soil. You can use tools such as hand lenses or microscopes or other tools like binoculars to help you achieve more unique photos. And just kind of playing around with photography in general, I think is really important and really fun. So I would encourage you to try it out. Of course, you can't always get a photo of everything. It's the audio recordings for birds and frogs and stuff really come into play, especially for nocturnal organisms where you just can't really get a photo. So consider trying that out. And use the notes and share comments. You can tag people. All of the things that you do within other social platforms, you can do within iNaturalist too. So you can check out all those things. So going back to the location accuracy or the geoprivacy of things, I would say try and get it as close as you can to the exact location where the species was, not generally where you took the photograph, but where it was, the organism was present. It's okay to be a little bit more general. You can make that circle, I think 1,000 kilometers or more. If you just remember, say in 1980, I was in Canada, but I have no idea where. I can still upload that observation to iNaturalist if I'm interested in doing so. But I would definitely recommend trying to use the most accurate location possible. Also, there's other tools. So one thing I've discovered recently is that you can use apps like Strava to kind of track your locations and sync those with your photos. You can always use your phone as a reference tool. So maybe you take a photo of a building or a bridge or a street sign, and you'll be able to find that later on. So lots of tools available to help you kind of remember those locations. Try and get them to the best of your ability. In terms of the geoprivacy, so currently there are, I think, about 1,000 to 1,100 species within Canada that are automatically obscured because they are sensitive species. These could be endangered or a little bit lower on the status, but they include subspecies and whatnot. So those are generally automatically obscured, and you'll need to contact iNaturalist directly to access those locations if you're a researcher. And then just considering your own privacy of, do you want your observations within your house or your yard shared with a larger group of people? Be considerate of that. And, I just can't emphasize enough, just, enjoying nature ethically, never approaching or disturbing wildlife, respecting nature, and just, of course, leaving no trace. Let's leave it better than the way we found it. So I think from that, you should have all the basic skills to start using iNaturalist, get involved with it. And you've still got, I think, 15 days now to practice a little bit before the City Nature Challenge. I would encourage you in any of your participating cities to make as many observations as you can. Push yourself to explore areas you've never been in, and encourage your friends, family, and colleague to do it. And of course, to just follow your local COVID guidelines. So with the City Nature Challenge, just to kind of give you a little bit more idea of what it is, if you're not familiar, it's this global BioBlitz with an emphasis on urban biodiversity that's put on by the California Academy of Sciences and Natural History Museum of Los Angeles. Locally here in Calgary, I want to thank the participating groups and sponsors of this year's event. Visit citynaturechallenge.org for the global city list and more educational resources and whatnot. Locally here in Calgary and some material for Alberta, you can visit citynatureyc.ca. And I would encourage you to join the Calgary project if you're available there. So thank you for that. And I'm happy to take any questions that we may have here.
Nice. We have a couple that came through on the chat while you were speaking. The first one, we just had someone join a little bit late and they were wondering, what was that question? Kind of why using iNaturalist versus other even nature apps like Merlin, Bird ID, Nature Links, eBird, and apps like that.
Okay, so what I would say is that the Merlin Bird ID is probably not that much better in terms of just an AI guessing at what your photo may be. It is convenient that you can, type in some other factors of what it is you saw. So maybe the color or the size, that kind of thing. But there's actually no data that's produced from Merlin in terms of your observation. So if you want to contribute some data to global community of researchers, I would encourage you to do that on iNaturalist and not on Merlin. But, to each their own, and you're totally welcome to use these other options. Nature Links, it's a great app as well. I personally not really gotten too much into it simply because I'm making a lot of observations, and through use of iNaturalist, I've made some really great connections all over the world, helping in various community science projects, which I just haven't found the same success with Nature Links. But it's also a great app, and I have used it quite a bit as well. So PlantSnap, it's going to give you some basic kind of suggestions about what it is you saw. And I definitely would encourage you, if you're a birder and you can make identifications on your own, to use eBird. I would not, they can't really substitute one another, eBird and iNaturalist. But one of the benefits of iNat, again, is that it will provide suggestions about what you saw. You can offer an exact location of something. And you can also provide comments in terms of your effort or distances covered. So does iNaturalist have an underwater version? So you can definitely upload observations of aquatic organisms. It's not as popular, but it's something that I definitely would like to see within our Calgary area a lot more this year, and just overall too. So if you're interested in going scuba diving or something around the world, why not kind of scout out your location by checking out some of the iNaturalist observations that have been shared for that location.
Nice. Let's see. I think the next question, I think you answered a little bit about kind of domestic and cultivated plants. And someone asked, what happens to observations without pictures? So example, observed with binoculars, how does that become research grade?
Okay, so there are some requirements for an observation to become research grade. First, the location has to be accurate. The timestamp has to be accurate. It has to be an original photo of your own, so no copyright issues there. And it has to require some evidence. The only way that an observation can become research grade is through the community vetting of your observation. So it's not actually possible right now to have a research grade observation without an image or sound recording associated.
Excellent. Someone was wondering how to subscribe to a particular animal. Example, bumblebees.
Okay, well, I don't really know anything about bumblebees, but I photograph them a lot. And what I would describe from them is often in my notes for bees, I'll talk about its associated species. So let's say it was visiting this certain type of plant or this tree. It was doing, let's say it's like a wasp or something like that. It was visiting my hummingbird feeder, that kind of thing. And just, I try and get like the best photos possible for those observations, but you can't always be successful. So, you don't have to really focus on getting the photo so much as just observing it for yourself. For example, look at the patterns, the size, perhaps the flight pattern of, say, a bee or an insect of any sort, and kind of ingrain that in your memory a little bit. Tell your own story about what it is you saw. It's your moment, it's your observation, and iNaturalist can only be an assistant to ensuring that you had a great opportunity outside or a fantastic encounter of some sort.
Nice. So I might be wrong, and the person that asked the question can clarify it, but I think they were asking like, how do you subscribe to it? Like you were talking about how you like beavers and stuff was coming up for beavers. I think that was the question.
Oh, okay. So all you do is you just go to, I'll just kind of load up my iNaturalist here really quick and you can check this out. So I'll do a new screen share here. And can you see that, Rebecca?
Yep.
Okay, so I've just signed into iNaturalist. I'm on my dashboard again, and I'll scroll down on the right side. And there's also these an iNaturalist forum, which is really fascinating. Lots of different questions, bug reports, feature requests, all those types of things. But if you go down, there's a button that says subscriptions, and you can subscribe to a taxon or even observations within a certain place. So if you're a blogger, you can, create a widget directly from iNaturalist about those subscriptions as well. So.
Nice. And is it the same on a phone app for doing that?
No, you can't do the subscriptions on the apps. It's only on the desktop. And that's just at this time, yeah.
Okay. Let me just get back into here. For default location, iNaturalist uses a division number. Is there a place where this system is explained? I'm not sure.
Well, once again, that would be like iNaturalist referencing kind of a third-party mapping platform. So I can't say exactly what that is, but it may just be using the name of the nearest location or point that it has. So for example, you know, it has a latitude, longitude associated with each observation, but then it also associates a name that's most closely related. So I think in the forum, there may be some answers for that. And if you want to email me, I can try and look that up and get back to you.
Thanks. I will note it is just after 8 o'clock. We have a few more questions. If you have a bit of time and want to stick around, if you're okay with that.
Yep.
But if you do have to leave, you can head on out. But we do have a question about how you set up a project. For example, my backyard by biodiversity, and then say my wife could join and submit stuff to it.
Yeah, so I'd be happy to explain that. I think the minimum requirement to make a project is like, I think it's 100 observations, maybe it's a little bit less, but you go into the projects tab under community and you can go to this manage your projects, I believe. Or sorry, maybe it's in another location here, but the most important thing is that you need to create a place. So under the More tab, you can click on places, and first you'll need to search to see if there's an existing one. Otherwise, you'll have to produce a place for your backyard, which is a bit of a process, I would say. I would just encourage you to simply like look at the pins that are in your backyard, and you can kind of develop some things for that. But you're totally welcome to create a project if you so choose to do that. And there's lots of information on the iNaturalist.ca about or help pages about creating projects and whatnot. So.
We had a question about what other cities in Alberta are hosting a City Nature Challenge. I did pop a link into the Canadian project, so you can see all the cities in Canada as well as Alberta that are listed. So if that didn't answer your question, we can go over them, but there's a bunch within Alberta.
No, I can say it here. Yeah, you know, I'm super happy to see more cities taking part. So in Canada this year, there's 23 cities, and 5 of those are in Alberta. That's going to be the Edmonton Metropolitan Region, Camrose County, the Lacombe County and Red Deer County are a single entity. And then we have Calgary, which is Calgary, Cochrane, Airdrie, Chestermere, Okotoks, and Glenbow Ranch. And then there's Lethbridge. So lots of opportunities to be involved across Alberta and even Canada.
Nice. What is the name of the upgraded iNaturalist app?
It's still called iNaturalist. Yeah.
Perfect. There's a question, does one need Facebook to use iNaturalist? And you do not need Facebook, so you can do it without.
You don't need Facebook, Twitter, any other social platform. And what's kind of nice about iNaturalist is that it is a bit anonymous. And one thing I would also say, a lot of photographers have concerns that sharing their photos to these types of platforms may discredit them in some way. They may be copied or used for other services. And you can actually manage all of your copyrights within iNaturalist too, which is pretty cool. All of mine are just listed as a Creative Commons because as I mentioned, I'm really into this open source data sharing kind of thing and want to help out in other ways where I can. So if you're a photographer, I would still encourage you to use iNaturalist, maybe upload your B grade shots, but don't be discouraged thinking that you're going to lose the rights to your images or even audio recordings because it is a social network.
Perfect. All right, we have one last question. They said, I've made observations more for identification purposes for myself. In those cases, several other iNaturalist users have made comments on what it is. Am I supposed to do anything more after that?
Okay, well, it's really up to you. So I would say that, once it's confirmed the observation, now it's research grade and could be included in some research practice. But, if you want to comment, thank other people, that's totally fine. But what I would encourage you to do is look to making your next observation. And when you're wondering what that organism's name was, you can go back to that last observation to remind yourself.
Nice, and that's all the questions that I have in the chat. Unless I missed something, but I think I got them all.
Great, well, really grateful to Weaselhead and Nature Alberta for supporting the presentation tonight. And once again, you're welcome to contact me if you have any questions about iNaturalist, how to use it. In the future, I will be putting out some YouTube videos, how-tos, and all that. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight.
Nice, and thank you, Matt, for coming and presenting to us tonight. And I think it seems like lots of people learned about iNaturalist, and we're getting excited about the City Nature Challenge. So only a couple of weeks away now.
15 days to go, so be ready for it.
And stuff is turning green out there now, so that's nice too.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Well, thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.